3, 2, 1.
More that you can lean into your own personal discomfort, say what needs to be said in a non-offensive way, the more you make the world a better place.
All right, social platforms, welcome. Good to see people here and attending these live streams. I love doing them. And we're going to talk about a very popular and common topic today. Wonderful title from Brenda at B Branding. Lost in translation when expectations go unspoken. That can even be extrapolated into when anything goes unspoken, and if it needs to be spoken, what are the implications of that? But we're going to focus on expectations and unarticulated expectations. Have some really interesting things to say about this too for you to think about. Every Tuesday here on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, we broadcast live simultaneously across platforms on these very meaningful topics to day-to-day life, where crisis de-escalation, crisis negotiation, education can bring some value. I was in a interview today with someone who is from the AI space, and we're doing some work on informing and instructing an AI model around this discipline of negotiation. And one of the things that Stephen, he said a number of interesting questions to me to help educate the model. But one of the questions he asked was, what if somebody doesn't really have a number of episodes occurring in their life of aversive interaction or crisis, and they're perfectly content with being controlling or coercive in their management of those events, up to and including the use of force in managing them. What would be the value of what we do in crisis de-escalation, crisis negotiation to someone like that in everyday life? It's not their job to respond to crisis. They don't have policies that they have to adhere to. They really don't care if someone is presenting dysregulation or discontrol to them. They just handle it in a very abrupt, direct manner. What's wrong with that? Well, there's nothing wrong with it if there's no expectation of relationship after the fact. If there is expectation of relationship after the fact, it might be worthy of consideration to find a new method. If someone is interested in reducing the likelihood of future emergency, these principles that we talk about are of value. If someone is interested in feeling empowered to speak up earlier than being abrupt, feeling empowered to say what needs to be said so that they're not living with regret about not saying anything, these principles matter. I thought that was a wonderful question. So let's talk about when expectations go unspoken, and let's talk about expectations. There's some wonderful research on anger and root causes of anger where expectations have been anchored in the findings. In fact, it was some research that was done on monkeys that if a monkey experienced a goal being blocked or an expectation being violated, they would become angry. This was done, and you can do the Google searching on this. This was done in the research with grapes and cucumbers, where cucumbers are things that monkeys can eat and enjoy. Grapes are things they love. And if you put two monkeys next to each other and you feed one a cucumber and you feed one a grape, the one who's eating the cucumber is looking at the one eating the grape and throwing the cucumber back at the researcher so that they can get a grape. And then when they don't get it, they want to tear the cage apart. This is repeatable. It was from this body of research and research that it inspired that we've come to understand that a violation of expectation is a root cause of anger. If your expectation, if your sense of expectation is violated, you'll start to see the needle move on your limbic system. This is not a small thing. This is a gigantic thing. So that's one piece of very important information. Violation of expectations stimulates anger in human beings. Because it's not just the monkey research that yielded that. There was research beyond that that further confirmed it. So that's part number one. Part number two, let's talk about this principle of not saying what needs to be said and the health implications of this. There are now extraordinary studies that are being done on the health implications of this in the social isolation context. People who withdraw from the world, immersed in their devices, reducing in their interactivity with other human beings, there are health implications that are being appraised and quantified as a result of these patterns. The experience of wanting to say something and not saying it because of fear of just fear. I'll just talk Tony Blauer for a minute. Just the fear. The fear to say something so I don't say it. And we walk away from the situation. I've done it. I'm sure that you've done it. I don't think there's a single occasion where that hasn't felt awful. Like I've underserved myself. I feel something viscerally in my gut. I needed to say something there and I'm too afraid to say it. I needed to say something there and I didn't say it. There are health implications associated with this now over time, which really implores all of us to consider, say what needs to be said. If you think it needs to be said, you can probably trust that it does need to be said. And that's different from I need to be heard. Something may need to be said. What if there's an injustice promulgated about you, an untruth? Something needs to be said. Someone takes your intellectual property or your ideas and rebrands them as their own. Something needs to be said. Because to not say something is to enable a lie, to enable an injustice, to enable an untruth, to enable misinformation, to enable disinformation. Something needs to be said. Let's talk about expectations now. Expectations that could be anchored in the employer. Expectations about punctuality, conditions of employment. What about expectations in my personal life? Expectations around, let's say, certain kinds of topics or things that I don't want to be around that someone has the potential to introduce. It's perfectly reasonable to want to establish to some degree expectations around things that are important to me. There are some expectations in our home surrounding this topic, actually, saying what needs to be said and truly providing a place where disagreement can sit. People not agreeing have to sit with one another until either it's accepted or it's resolved in some way. Ultimately, really just being accepted one way or the other. There are some expectations here. Let's talk about verbalizing them. I have certain expectations in my relationships with others. And if I sense that that expectation is going to be encroached upon or violated, I may language myself this way. I'm thinking about the example that's in my mind and if I want to articulate it or not. So let me think about this. Mm. I don't think I'll betray myself and do that one. Let's think of another one. What's an expectation um, in my home that sometimes I need to verbalize? Ah, I'll give you a good one. I'll give you a good one. Um, if I front an airplane ticket for someone in my close, intimate circle, and we make an arrangement that payments need to be made to me, and I observe that the payments aren't made, I'm going to have to articulate the expectation. Now, I want to do it in a way where the relationship is not on the chopping block, that the person doesn't experience undue guilt or shame, um, and that the payments are initiated. So, I'll example an OFNR, observation, feeling, need, request, in this case, and I'll also language a VDSP, just for fun. So, what would an OFNR sound like? What would an observation, feeling, need, request sequence sound like to someone who's not holding up their end in paying back what I fronted for them? Hey, so and so, look, I want to share with you that I've observed that no money has come in satisfaction for this advance that I did on your behalf. Um, I'm feeling dismissed and unimportant and possibly even exploited, if that could be a feeling, as a result of this. I need to know that our relationship is secure in order for me to do like this, anything like this again. Would you be willing to explain why the payment has not come yet and when you intend on making it? That's pretty non offensive. I stated the observation, I stated how it made me feel, I stated what I need, and then I stated a request. Let's do a VDSP for the same thing. Hey, so and so, look, I've observed that you haven't paid anything in satisfaction of this ticket. In our home, our agreements are sacred with one another. How about you let me know why you haven't paid or if there's some kind of problem? That way I can better understand what's happening here and we can try to make provisions for how this is ultimately solved. That's pretty non offensive. I was able to get to my expectation. What's my expectation here? That the bill gets paid. I'm interested in this thing getting paid. I want to encourage anyone who's listening who might be struggling with, yeah, I have expectations, but what happens is when I articulate them, I don't know if it's because they're too strong or I do it too abruptly, but it turns people off, so I don't say anything about it. I think that's a pretty common kind of outcome. What's another outcome? Um, I don't say anything at all. I'm afraid, so I don't say anything. And uh, as a result, I wind up white knuckling it through regret and personal loathing because I didn't articulate an expectation. There are ways that expectations can be spoken. And the key here is to do it in a way that honors your need to express it. And ultimately, if it's done in the least offensive way possible. I'm wondering if anybody has any comments or associations to the notion of expectations, and if this is meaningful for you. Put something in the comments if you do. Feel free to ask for an example of what an OFNR or a VDSP might look like for your expectation situation. Um, I have had countless interactions of a supervisory or managerial nature with subordinates over expectations, and one of the things that was very helpful in discussing expectations is to describe an expectation as an external value or requirement or policy or law in a deferral. Hey, look, I've noticed that you've been late to work 13 times this month. Punctuality is a condition of employment. Not being on time is something you need to do. Punctuality is an expectation of employment. How about you tell me if what the barriers are to being here on time? That way, I can better understand how to come up with a plan that supports you for your success moving forward. Um, Describing the expectation as something independent of my expectation. My expectation as your supervisor is that all people on my team come to work on time. Well, it's actually a bigger expectation than that. It's a condition of employment. It's something bigger than you and me. It's something that you have to square with that's out here. It's got nothing to do with you and me. You'll find that it's a lot easier to talk about things when we reframe the interaction as much as we can. This isn't about you and me. It's about you and this thing that we have to discuss here. So, when it comes to expectations in the employer or supervisory relationship context, these things have nothing to do with you as the person who has to language them. But let's say as a supervisor, you're afraid. I have to have my first supervisory discussion with a subordinate. I have to provide a performance meeting record and write them up. And I've never done this before, and I'm shitting my pants about it because I don't want this person to not like me. I don't want to get angry. I want to do this right. I don't want to have this person talk badly about me, whatever the case might be. I'm here to tell you that expectations can be discussed in a way that makes it not about you at all. The example I just provided being a good one. What's another one? Look, hey, I totally appreciate that you may have a relationship with legal substances and that you might consume them freely on time after work or before work. Here at work, the consumption of marijuana is a violation of policy. If you're able to string together a medical reason why this is necessary during the day, a reasonable accommodation can be pursued. If you're not able to do that, um, I should have inverted that. Let me invert that right now. Um, Look, I appreciate that you have a relationship to legal substances and that you consume them before work and after work. Um, the consumption of substances is completely legal before and after work. At work, there is a policy that prevents their use. If you're not able to put together a medical rationale for it, I'm going to be required under policy to institute a performance meeting record. If you can provide a medical justification and a note from a doctor, I might be able to circumvent the process and I'll report that out. That way, your consumption would be validated. So, right there was a VD negative prompt followed by positive prompt SP. That's the way that we refer to that in Jumpstart. I validated, I deferred, I had to do a negative prompt. If you're unable to produce medical justification for consumption, the outcome is that you're going to be written up. If you're able to produce medical justification, not only could you potentially avoid being written up, we'd be able to enter the proper forms. That way your consumption would be approved. Now, you may be laughing at this saying, what a ridiculous example. The example is not the point. The point is how I languaged my way through that for something I just conceived of impromptu. And I was able to speak an expectation. So, what are the big takeaways from here? Violation of expectation for human beings is a cause of anger. Big takeaway. There are health implications associated with not saying what needs to be said, with isolating from what needs to be said, with isolating from others. The research on this is significant. There are ways to speak expectations in a non-offensive way, which is a different topic entirely than needing to be heard. I need to speak an expectation. I need to speak about something that's important to me, important to the employer. And I hope that you consider these approaches, whether it be OFNR or VDSP. Speaking expectations, speaking what needs to be said is a life skill. And I hope that you continue to work at it and get better at it like we all are. Thank you for the like and for those who are in attendance. And I wish you all the best. Take good care. Thanks for joining today's live. Join us on Thursday at the Jumpstart Mastery Network, where there'll be more, let's say, content oriented for professionals in the space. Take good care.